You want to get to pre-coronavirus, that might not ever happen.
COVID-19 will be here for the next 18 months or more. We will not be able to return to normalcy.
We're never going to be the same again. The fear that we have, the anxiety that we have, that's not just going to go away. I don't think we get back to normal. We get to a new normal.
I know media well. I've been working in mainstream media at the highest level for many years, and I know what we're seeing now in the mainstream narrative is nothing but a campaign. We all have this inner voice, the child that can spot the bullshit, but that intuitive voice is suppressed by the mass manipulation of the media machine, making you doubt your intuition in favour of the opinion of those faceless experts, and fabricated statistics reshaping your perception of reality and in turn controlling your behaviour. We all feel something is off here. There are too many inconsistencies with this pandemic. The media coverage has been exposed more than ever with their calculated fear-mongering tactics, and a lot of it doesn't make sense. But then you pinch yourself and say, nah, why would they do that? What would they benefit?
Today I want to discuss how American billionaires are now nearly 20% richer than they were before the United States economy shut down. That's over a $583 billion surge of wealth across the 0.001%, while 1.5 million working-class Americans applied for unemployment benefits just last week, bringing the number of individuals receiving unemployment aid to 30 million. Since working-class Americans and small business owners were the ones who were told by the government that they had to shut down their businesses during this time, even though businesses like Amazon remained open despite the stories of numerous outbreaks that occurred in their facilities. I covered a story back in February about how a record number of major American CEOs stepped down at the beginning of 2020. There were many theories as to why these CEOs had been leaving in droves over the last year, peaking at the beginning of this year, ranging from theories like they had offices in China and saw the detrimental effects of the virus on the Chinese economy, so they had to get out of Dodge before things got bad, to the theory that they were tipped off by insiders to cash out on their stocks while prices were high and about to plummet from the economy shutting down, to the theory that these individuals might be bailing out before feeling the full force of an executive order signed in 2017 that authorized the seizure of assets of people and organizations involved in human rights abuse and corruption. Among the CEOs who stepped down were the CEOs of Disney, MasterCard, L Brands, otherwise known as Victoria's Secret, Uber Eats, Hulu, MGM, IBM, Salesforce, and LinkedIn. A Nestle CEO, Lockheed Martin, Morgan Stanley, Wells Fargo, BlackRock, Nokia, you get the picture. You've got a good mix of corporatocracy juggernauts, banking creatures, and government contractors. A record number of CEOs left their positions within 2 months' time in 2020, but really this was a trend over the past year or so. In 2019, over 1,300 high-level CEOs had left their positions, even during record stock market highs. But what's most interesting about these CEOs who stepped down at the beginning of 2020 was that their company stocks peaked in early February and tanked in March. So if these corporate executives did have knowledge that the economy was going to take a major hit, then by resigning in January and February, this allowed these corporate CEOs to cash out on their company stocks that they would otherwise be forced to keep while employed at the company.
Hello, useless eaters. As your unqualified, non-elected global human health overlord, I'd like to take this opportunity to flaunt my position of power and influence over society and share some of my plans for you and your future. When I amassed my fortune in computer software, I demonstrated that I was willing to lie, steal code, cheat my partners, and exercise monopolistic control to destroy my competitors. Now that I've retired, I can rebrand myself as a humanitarian. With my for-profit foundation masquerading as a charity, I can advocate for population reduction and sponsor mass human experiments with unproven vaccines in vulnerable populations. Like my father, a powerful banker, eugenicist, and Rockefeller crony himself, it's always been my ambition to decide who lives and, more importantly, how many have to die. Whether it's under the guise of climate change or world health, it's really all about controlling and culling the human herd for fun and profit.
The vaccine is critical because until you have that, things aren't really going to be normal. They can open up to some degree, but the risk of a rebound will be there until we have very broad vaccination.
The vaccine that they're going to be making millions and billions of dollars from. People, wake up. Stand up for your rights. If one or two of us only do it, nothing can happen. We need hundreds. We need thousands to stand up and say, no, we will not submit to the tyranny that is taking place from a evil, unconstitutional, unrighteous group of people, a small number who want to control us and take over this world.
And then the final solution, which is a year to 2 years off, is the vaccines.
Now, I'm a Bible-believing Christian. If the book of Revelation and tribulation is true, there may be certain things that we can't stop. It's got to be God's time frame, though, not theirs. And it still means we have the time, all of us. I think even if we know something bad's going to happen, I believe each and every one of us must stand up to evil, must stand up to what's wrong and fight for what is right and true.
What we're actually seeing is the systematic implementation of the fall of the Republic and the rise of the corporation of the United States. Every major event is a step in the ladder to achieve that end. COVID is just another rung in the ladder, which is why there's a deliberate mixing of all the wordplay. I mean, we should stop calling it, quarantine. That's a term designated for people that are verified sick. This is a house arrest mandated by the state. You should stop calling it, social distancing. There's nothing social about forced isolation. We should stop saying safer at home when millions of Americans don't have basic necessities adequate to fit their needs. It assumes that everybody's home is equally as safe as the people that are making the statements. We should stop saying, this is for the greater good. When you close the economy, killing millions of businesses that families have worked generations to establish, that's anything but good. We should stop saying, this is the new normal. That's just blatant mind control drivel. There's nothing normal about forced isolation, treating your neighbor like they have the plague, breathing your own bodily waste, wearing masks, living in constant fear of contamination. That's normal.
The real purpose of FEMA was to bring about the new world order in the United States. They are part of a bigger, wider agenda that includes Bill Gates, other billionaires throughout the world, Fauci, Burke, that you see standing beside Donald Trump mostly every day in these last few months. Work with Gates are part of planning this so-called pandemic that is not a true pandemic. It's a live exercise. If you check the internet, you'll find back in March, there was Secretary of State Pompeo on a news conference with President Trump standing right beside him. He slipped and he mentioned that we were in a live exercise pertaining to COVID-19.
We're in a live exercise here to get this right. We're in a live exercise here to get this right.
A live exercise pertaining to COVID-19. Do you know what a live exercise is? It's a military exercise. They never dreamed that the world and the public was going to fall for it to the extent they did. Even Trump, if you listen, whispers over to him, you should have let us know. You should have let us know.
We're in a live exercise here to get this right.
This live exercise is the first stage of a plan that began years ago. Powerful people have been involved to bring this new world government into existence for a long time. Now they're setting it in motion, and people have to find out what the real truth is, not that this is some disease that we all have to be in terror of. Stand up, because there isn't a real disease. You want to see real disease? They plan to do that in the next few months.
But we're going to have this intermediate period of opening up, and it won't be normal until we get an amazing vaccine to the entire world.
They're going to get us so scared, so intimidated by this fake pandemic that once they unleash the real disease, and you want to know how that's going to happen? Months of lockdown, break down your immune system. How do people, when they're months not getting fresh air, sunlight, being in fear and anxiety for months, how do you think they're going to come out into the world and be healthy? The mask on. The mask of submission. Your new masters, your new slave masters, they want you to be in fear. They want you to wear that mask because it will lower your resistance even more. You'll have CO2, carbon dioxide, other things, unhealthy things that will affect your health. They want to weaken your immune system.
In November of last year, I hosted Event 201, a war game simulation of a global pandemic. Leaders from private corporations, global banks, governments, and the media got together to strategize ways they could align in lockstep when responding to a worldwide health crisis. Using a coordinated campaign of fear-mongering, intimidation, social shaming, and economic blackmail, we realized that we could get around dangerous philosophies like individual liberty and national sovereignty. With an obedient population, we would be free to implement our own top-down solutions, like forced quarantines, social distancing, contact tracing, and mandatory testing, as a means to seize technocratic control of society.
Moving right along, it was also at the beginning of the year that the richest people in the world were making big moves. Jeff Bezos unloaded $4.1 billion worth of Amazon shares in February. And Bill Gates stepped down from the Microsoft board of directors in March to pursue his own personal brand of philanthropy. On March 21, 2020, it was reported that Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos had asked for government funding to the tune of $5 billion in grants or loans to keep commercial space company employees on the job and launch facilities open. Since, of course, Elon Musk runs SpaceX and has a net worth of $42 billion, Jeff Bezos is founder of the aerospace company Blue Origin and has a reported net worth of $163 billion. Both Elon and Jeff Bezos wanted the IRS to give them cash for R&D or research and development tax credits. So the billionaires wanted government handouts while the rest of the United States was out of work and confined to their homes, receiving a measly $1,200 stimulus check. Not only that, but Jeff Bezos actually started a relief fund for his employees during this time that encouraged everyone to donate to his contracted employees and delivery drivers during the lockdown. So not only did Bezos, who is on track to become the world's first public trillionaire, ask for handouts from the government, but he also asked for donations from peasants to keep his employees paid. Keep in mind, the tiny mom-and-pop restaurant down the street from me gave away free food to those who were hungry during the lockdown, no questions asked. But billionaires asked for handouts from the public to fund their companies. Amazon has benefited from the pandemic more than any other retailer because the government decided Amazon facilities were essential and sold essential items. Meanwhile, the mom-and-pop hardware store down the road had to close. You know, like how the Walmart bakery stayed open, but the bakery owned by your cousin had to shut down because it wasn't essential. So with an increased demand for e-commerce as small businesses and in-person retail stores complied with statewide lockdown measures, Bezos' wealth grew in dollars more than any other billionaire. And isn't it interesting that all of these companies who had to ask for public and government handouts, cut hours, and lay off employees somehow found the funds to donate millions of dollars to organizations like Black Lives Matter?
Now imagine my excitement when we had the opportunity to declare our own global pandemic. It was my chance to look like the Nostradamus of public health and to position myself and business partners like Dr. Fauci as the de facto authorities on response and solutions. Through exaggerated doomsday scenarios and computer simulations, our petty control freaks instituted harsh rules and draconian lockdowns. Even after our dire predictions proved false, scared and well-meaning people continued to submit to the arbitrary and foolish demands of their so-called leaders. Having achieved global lockdown and medical martial law, we will continue to hold hostage your ability to congregate, work, travel, or do just about anything until we're prepared to roll out our bigger plan. I'd like to call this Pandemic 1, because believe me, we have others in the works. Our final solution is to have you begging for us to vaccinate, tag, and digitally track each one of you like livestock. Not only will my foundation enjoy legal immunity and trillions in profits, but these mandatory experimental vaccines will move us so much further down the road to absolute centralized global control. If only my good friend Jeffrey Epstein had been here to celebrate with me aboard the Lolita Express.
A lot of people don't realize that the major media has been controlled for years, and more so even now. They are in the pockets of all these rich elitists, Trilateral Commission, Bilderberger Society. It's a multi-tier, starting with the pyramid that you see on our dollar bill, going down to this elite with numerous organizations that people used to laugh at. People used to laugh about these things, but they are in existence. They do exist, and now they're making themselves known in a way that people can start seeing that this is true. It wasn't conspiracy theories, and that's one of the things I love to say. I met people over the years who are involved with some of these projects, and they used to laugh at the ordinary people saying they're going to just think it's a conspiracy theory. Soon as you hear conspiracy theory, you know there's truth. There's something that they don't want you to know. Now, as far as Judy is concerned, look what happened to her. They could go into her college record, who was in the film Plandemic, who has been exposing what was done. She was in prison for this. Her life has been ruined, and yet she has the guts to come out here and to warn people of what her part was within the Fauci organization and the dangers of these vaccines that they're creating with biometrics in it. You understand, don't take this vaccine. And what they're doing to her as far as the media is concerned, a lot of people don't realize they can change the record. They could destroy your life and the internet, change your school records, change your college records, change the scenario of events of your life, and somebody goes online and they think that's the truth. See, this is the danger when the media is given that kind of power. So don't believe everything you're seeing in the mainstream media. The mainstream media is following the agenda. Some of them willingly, others because they were threatened and they're afraid, but they're all part of the plandemic.
We aren't pressured to test for flu, but ER doctors now, my friends that I talk to say, you know, it's interesting, when I'm writing up my death report, I'm being pressured to add COVID. Why is that? Why are we being pressured to add COVID to maybe increase the numbers and make it look a little bit worse than it is? I think so.
Last night, the doctor's video, the one you just saw, was pulled off of YouTube. The only justification for taking it down was that the two physicians on screen had reached different conclusions from the people currently in charge. YouTube and its parent company Google have now officially banned dissent. The CEO of YouTube admitted that openly.
And it's time for everyone to wake up. There's going to be other people like Judy trying to stand up. There's many doctors. People, why they're still online, search the internet. You can find the truth and the information there. Don't be afraid to stand up for your rights and to stand up against COVID-19. COVID-19 is a planned pandemic.
And now it's come out that the 5 wealthiest Americans, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Warren Buffett, and Larry Ellison, saw their wealth grow by a total of $101 billion over the last few months. And I wanted to discuss this today because it's like nobody cares. I think y'all care, but no one else does. They're happy working 40 plus hours a week at their job that barely pays the bills as long as they have their phone with Instagram or TikTok on it and the television playing Netflix and 31 flavors of Baskin-Robbins ice cream to choose from. But beyond that, they don't care. So I'm just sitting over here wondering how to rephrase this. $583 billion of wealth has been transferred from the 99.99% to the 0.001% in a matter of months. $101 billion of that went to just 5 people, when the government told ordinary, everyday individuals they had to stay home and not work, while owners of massive corporations were given the okay to continue business as usual because they were identified by the government as essential. Now here's where it gets hairy, because many of these billionaires walk a thin line between being a corporate executive and a government employee. Given that, like Bezos and Gates, for instance, were awarded exclusive government contracts throughout their career that ultimately got them where they are today. Taxpayers bankrolled the entire thing, Microsoft computers in every government building and school, special Amazon cloud contracts with intelligence agencies, special deals on shipping with the post office, which has financially hurt the post office, and now the American taxpayers give an $18 billion gift to the post office every year. Because of an Amazon exclusive corporate deal the United States awarded Bezos. I think it's safe to say that Bezos has a vested interest in keeping this lockdown going because he's the only retail ball game in town. Just like Bill Gates has a vested interest in keeping this lockdown going because he's invested in the cure for the virus. And those are just 2 billionaires that I'm mentioning. We're not even covering billionaires in the arenas of medicine, healthcare, technology, who most certainly have a vested interest in keeping countries locked down. At least that's what's going through my mind as I'm watching the media push corona numbers to the forefront as coverage of racism and riots die down. Because it's really looking like corona is coming back in full force after states have slowly opened back up. Just today, the governor of Texas has rolled back the reopening of the state, ordering bars to close and putting a restriction on outdoor gatherings once again, as the number of virus cases hit a daily record of 40,000 new cases. Now, what does it mean if states slow their openings? What does it mean if states lock down again? For one, it means even more wealth from the 99.99% gets transferred to the 0.001% based on the pattern that emerged in March.
So remember, global citizens, this will end when I say it ends. Could be a year, maybe 2 years, maybe never. I guarantee that if we have our way, it will be at least until you're not able to do anything to stop it. Just surrender your personal freedom and common sense to our fear merchants in government and the media, because none of this works unless you all go along with it.
Now get this, there's some ironies that are here, right? A society that kills millions of babies a year for convenience has shut itself down to prevent adults from dying. People that on the one hand slaughter babies in the womb by the millions are now preaching to the masses about the sanctity of human life. It's double speak, double talk. It's the two doctrine policy. One for the initiated, one for the uninitiated. One for the inner circle, another for the masses. It's like saying, if I violate the stay-at-home order, I can be arrested, but you're letting convicted criminals out of prison so they don't get coronavirus. If there's a real pandemic, does it require faulty virus models, rigged test results, 81% false positives, inaccurate news reporting, staged hospital overruns, manipulated death certificates? Nope.
I never dreamed that this extent of events, this chain of events would be happening the way it is now, because so many things are happening in hospitals now where if you do your due diligence, you'll find that a lot of deaths are being attributed to COVID-19 because they need to up the numbers. If anything tests positive, that there could be a potential of COVID-19. And corona, that's a flu, that's a cold. We all have that virus in our system. We've all had it at some time in our life. So naturally, it's going to show up in any test. And most of these tests are not accurate anyhow. Again, this is all part of it. You go into a hospital, doctors are being forced or either willingly going along because of the money. They can't practice regular medicine anymore. It's only for COVID patients. So they're getting $13,000 per bed, and if they put the patient on a ventilator, $39,000. That ventilator ultimately is going to kill that patient because it's the wrong treatment for most of them. So people wake up. Stop being afraid. Do your due diligence. Don't just believe what I'm saying. Go online before they pull everything down, because the plan is for 24/7. The media is just going to be COVID-19, making you afraid of COVID-19, that you have to take this vaccine, and you're all going to go lining up like sheep. And once you get that vaccine, it will make you sick. It will make you sick, because part of this plan is to depopulate the earth, to get the numbers down, to kill people. They want to kill us. And I hate to say this, but I have to be blunt, because this is a time for truth and bluntness, not to be afraid to speak the truth. They want to get rid of us. They want just a small number of people left on the earth to serve them, this 1% of the 1% that is taking over right now. All the world is having this happen. It isn't just here in America, but they have to destroy America. They cannot fully complete this plan until they bring America completely down, and that's what the plan is. They're trying to destroy the food chain. If you do your due diligence, you will see that a lot of farms, a lot of chickens, already 2 million have been destroyed. You'll see some of the stories and complaints from farmers of what's happening to the animals, what they have to do. They're doing it in stages, though. They're testing us. They're doing it so subtly and carefully so as not to create shock all at once.
If the virus is so deadly, why hasn't it wiped out the homeless who don't social distance, wash themselves regularly, let alone, live in or have access to a sterile environment? Last year, 1.5 million people died of tuberculosis. Why were you not wearing a mask during the tuberculosis pandemic? Because the mainstream media didn't tell you to wear a mask, right? Because though 1.5 million people died from tuberculosis, there was no tuberculosis pandemic, any more than there's a coronavirus pandemic. What you're really participating in is a beta test for AI systems and facial recognition. See, these cameras work best when people are, distance apart. Now they're actually testing through machine learning how to recognize, a face that's partially covered. It's also a way to easily determine who's compliant and who's not. Who does the propaganda work on and who it doesn't?
That's why you have President Trump, March 13th, he declared a state of emergency. Then on April 19th, he declared the 50-state national emergency, which was the first time in American history that any president ever did this for a phony virus that he knows is fake. He gets up there with these news conferences, and I was a supporter of Trump up until March. I have to say I've been very disappointed. Maybe he's been threatened, but I still believe that he is part of the plan, because the problem is what most of us don't know. For years, Republicans and Democrats, it didn't matter. Every president has been in the pocket of the agenda. They don't have the power. That shadow government, that government behind our government that's been taking over things has been doing this and controlling governments and nations with the plan to bring about what's happening right now. So when Donald Trump signed those 2 executive orders, he handed control of America over to the FEMA. That's how all the governors, and remember, he gave control to each of the individual governors to handle in each of their states, however they wanted to handle this under their individual laws. So it's different in each state how bad or how fast they're moving forward with the agenda.
Mobilizing our military on the basis that we do have a vaccine. It's a massive job to give this vaccine. Our military is now being mobilized, so at the end of the year, we're going to be able to give it to a lot of people very, very rapidly.
And you're just doing something with syringes as well, so that you can have it plentiful.
That's right.
You have enough vaccine.
We will have the tremendous force, because assuming we get it, then you have to distribute it.
Right.
And unless you're mobilized and ready, you're not going to be able to do it for a long time. So we're starting now. We're of the assumption that by the end of the year, we're going to have a vaccine, and then we have to be able to give it, to use it on most of our population.
A couple of days ago, I saw several images which will haunt me for years. One photo showed school children in a playground, each child confined within a chalk square drawn on the ground. The children were not allowed to play with one another, they weren't allowed to touch one another, they had to play games by themselves, several feet apart from anyone else. Try playing tag by yourself. The quickest game in the history of playground sport. No football, no games that require contact or getting closer than a few feet away, no racing around, screeching for no apparent reason other than the fact that you've got joy in your heart and energy to waste. You just sit in your soulless little chalk square. Another photo I saw showed children in a classroom sitting yards apart from one another, each child wearing a mask and a plastic visor. This is utter madness. It is also wicked cruelty. Back in the 1970s, I wrote the first popular book on how stress can affect the human mind and body. I would never have imagined that anyone could treat children in such a cold-blooded and damaging way. In the UK, it's now being alleged that if a child falls or has any sort of accident, then they must not be helped by other children or by teachers. The child who falls and grazes a knee will have to attend to it themselves. The child who accidentally wets themselves will have to deal with it alone. No hugs, no caring. Enough. The lunacy has gone far enough. Who in the name of all things holy thinks up these barbaric madnesses? We would be better off keeping schools permanently closed. Has anyone in authority any idea of the permanent damage this will do to these poor children? Children will be scarred for life by what's already happened to them. We'll be breeding a new race of weirdos, loners and psychopaths. Teachers are educated people. They should care about the science. A study by paediatricians couldn't find one case of a child passing on the coronavirus. Not one. One boy who did have the disease failed to give it to 170 people who were classified as contacts. To be honest, my feeling is that if teachers want to protect children from dangers, they'd do better to insist that all children wear crash helmets in the classroom in case meteors fall on their heads. In reality, I think teachers should insist on opening up schools so that children can be taught again. And please, let's forget the daft rules. No stupid chalk squares, no plastic visors. Look at the science. Look at the figures we have. Look at the real evidence, not the hyperbole and the terrifying myth-making nonsenses poured out by power-hungry politicians and headline-hunting journalists. If we don't stop this nonsense now, in a year or two's time we'll find ourselves dealing with a generation of mortally wounded young people, unable to mix, unable to talk or relate to others, bewildered, lonely, confused, and in a quiet despair which they don't understand. And I fear that quite a number of them will turn out to be so disturbed that they become antisocial and even violent. We should either open schools properly or we should keep them closed.
When is society going to wake up to what we're going through? What we're really going through and what this is really all about? Control and destroying the humanity in people. These rules are how you make a generation of future worker drones who are broken of their humanity, who do what they're told and comply with whatever the government tells them, as if they're just reprogrammable machines. And I know what you're thinking. We'll just homeschool our kids from now on. But remote online learning is exactly what the powers that be want. They know that most people will think that these kinds of rules are intolerable, and they'll therefore want to homeschool instead. And online learning just means children will be further detached from each other, thus creating more social distancing, more isolation. And of course, homeschooling is not possible for many parents because they need to work.
So my point here is that while it may be an election year, and you might engage in heated debates with your Democratic or Republican counterparts, or even engage in arguments over White Lives Matter versus Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter, Asian Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, none of it actually matters. The media, owned by corporations and individuals who have no loyalty to our nation, peddle this great lie, this enormous myth that anyone can achieve this American dream of wealth and success. But look around. I would bet that nearly everyone you know is a wage slave who owns nothing in their possession, not their car, house, or education. Yet somehow we've all been conned into blaming each other, regular everyday people, for our problems. No, it's white people's fault. No, it's the Democrats' fault. No, it's the alt-right's fault. No, it's illegal immigrants' fault. When really, it's everybody's fault. We've got to have some accountability here. It's everyone's fault who doesn't realize we're knee-deep in a game of Monopoly as this lockdown continues. The bank cannot run out of money, but you can. Your get-out-of-jail ticket is a vaccine, and nobody wins until everyone else loses.
When the government shuts down millions of small businesses but doesn't lay off any government employees, it's not about the health. When the state bans dentists from practicing but deems it necessary for abortion clinics to stay open, it's not about your health. When the state prevents you from buying seeds for your garden but allows you to purchase lottery tickets, it's not about your health. An institution that's caught trafficking drugs shouldn't be able to regulate plants. An institution that's racked up $23 trillion prior to coronavirus in debt shouldn't be allowed to manage the retirement fund. If people are really concerned about public health and safety, they don't care if people, eat garbage, drink poison, smoke cancer, and take prescription drugs, but think that toilet paper, hand sanitizer, and masks are going to protect them from the boogeyman coronavirus. This is a special kind of stupid that I can't address here. You should ask yourself a couple basic questions. When did you consent from, you creating the government to serve you, to you serving the government ruling over you? If you want to know, who's in charge, just think about who you can and can't criticize.
Stop being afraid of COVID-19. Wake up, America. Wake up, world.